All right. So, welcome to episode number 2 of Conversations with You. I am blessed to have Tyler with me here today. Tyler, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, James.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you taking some time, and I'm interested to learn and hear about your story. I know you said you've listened to the first episode, and I guess we can just kind of get to know each other here on camera. This technology is a wonderful platform to get. I don't think we know how to really use it yet.
I don't.
I was watching this. Jordan Peterson was talking, I think, to I forgot the guy's name, something Wisdom, and he was talking about how this long podcast is so much in its infancy that we really don't know how to use it in all the different ways. And the person that I talked to last time, he was inspired to start his own YouTube channel after we talked. So I'm like, cool, that's good. People should get out there and make content. So I guess first things first, man, tell us, a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? And, where are you from?
Yeah, I'm a Florida native. I've been in Central Florida my entire life. I'm like third generation Floridian. I
Wow.
currently live, over in the Lakeland area. I live here, work here, and
Wow.
yeah,
Very cool.
yeah,
Very cool. Yeah. I didn't know you're 45 minutes from me. David Gernowski?
I do not.
Yeah. So he's from Lakeland. He has a show on the radio and a YouTube channel called A Neighbor's Choice.
Okay,
I think you'll like him. He talks a lot
yeah,
about a lot of the different things we're interested in. I've met with him a couple times. Great guy. He actually just talked with Jonathan Peugeot. They just had a talk a couple days ago, actually.
that's cool. Cool.
So yeah, it's good to have a fellow Florida native on the channel. I don't know if your experience is here when I meet people or here at work, it's like the vast majority are from elsewhere.
Yeah, especially these days, you see it more and more.
Yeah.
I think with everything going on with lockdowns in other parts of the country,
Yeah.
we really have it so good right here. And growing up, I used to complain about Northerners coming down, especially around wintertime and all that. But as I've gotten
Mhm.
older, I don't blame folks. I really don't. And
Yeah.
as long as they respect the way that we do things, I welcome them.
Yeah. No, definitely. And you've grown up in Lakeland your whole life?
No, I actually grew up probably about an hour and a half south of Lakeland, really small town. My high school was probably, I think my graduating class is like 150. The only high school in town, like really, really small, like rural town. I come from a farming family,
Hmm.
so the whole agriculture thing's always been, part of what I've been in
Was
my
that in
whole life.
Sebring, down in Sebring or somewhere like that?
Yeah, just south of that little town called Lake Placid. But
Oh, I know Lake Placid. Yeah.
yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. I grew up hanging out in Sebring because there's nothing to do in Lake Placid, but you know how it
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So what was it like growing up in Lake Placid and in Sebring? What was your memories
Uh,
as a child?
Nice. I pretty good childhood, man. Great parents. I'm really close with them. Talk with them every day.
Awesome.
Um, and yeah, it's been very good. But no, it's a good place to grow up. I think. Well, I was born in Fort Myers, and one of the reasons my parents decided to move back to a more rural area is because they saw like my school district, what life would might be like if I went to school there, and were like, let's not have them around that. So
Yeah.
got me away from you know a lot of the drug issues and all that, and
Hmm.
grew up in Lake Placid. It was good. We have kind of a saying in that area, which is you're in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of everything, because
Hmm.
even though you live in the middle of nowhere, you're probably about an hour and a half from Miami or Orlando or Tampa or the East Coast or
Yeah.
wherever you want to be.
Very cool. And
So
did you grow up on a farm?
didn't grow up, we didn't live on the farm, but it's like a 30-40 minute drive to the farm. So I guess you
Mhm.
can kind of say, yeah, I did. I mean, I didn't live on it, but growing up there, hunting, fishing, camping, that kind of thing. I've always
Okay.
been, I'm not a city person at all. I very much love being out in the country.
And what kind of farm was it?
It's still there. Citrus. My father grew citrus, and for a while we were growing peaches. And the peaches were actually a variety developed at University of Florida. Got me interested in doing that myself, and I studied it over there, and
Oh, yeah,
studied.
me too.
Yes. Oh, cool, cool. So
Yeah.
we're both alum. That's neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you study?
I studied philosophy and political science.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, not a lot of work in for industrial philosophers though. So, that's kind of just kind of having fun. I
Yeah.
know you studied biology, right?
In that, yeah, in that sphere, I was actually horticultural science, which is, just a very specialized form of it. So focused on plants, especially crop plants for eating and that kind of thing. And that's pretty much what I do. I actually, after school, I did a little bit of farming. I farmed down south around outside of West Palm, and now I'm in private research. I actually did some work with UF for a little bit, but
Hmm.
I work for a private company right now, and it's been pretty solid.
Hmm. You know, if the there's this I don't know if it's a old wives' tale, that were the love bugs created at the University of Florida. Have you heard that?
Oh, yeah. I grew up hearing that, and there is some truth to it. So uh, let me see if what I'm about to say is kind of what you heard growing up, which is that the entomology department over at University of Florida, they had a evil scientist moment where they decided to create this insect to somehow combat mosquitoes, and it got
Hmm.
loose and it took over the state. No, so they're actually from South America
Hmm.
originally. My understanding was that they came up from trade and travel from South America up into into Mexico, and then throughout the Gulf Coast. That's how they got here. That being said, my understanding is there was a breeding program in the 70s where I think they were trying to breed a certain variety of the love bug to either crowd out, outcompete, or even eat mosquitoes.
Hmm.
I don't know which one of those it is, but that had like limited success. Didn't really get much anywhere. But as far as UF losing control of their experiment, that's not true.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like one of those kind of tales there. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I heard too, that they were built to combat mosquitoes. And it's weird if you don't know, if you're not familiar with love bugs, they're these like little small black, tiny, maybe a few a centimeter or two, if that long, and they're connected, always connected together. So they have their life cycle is really short, maybe a day or two. All right, so
Hmm.
they're born, they find their mate, and then they die. It's really kind of a cool little story there. Um,
Yeah.
Now, when growing up, did you so you have a cross there? Were your parents religious?
Yeah. So I would say I grew up in a pretty religious family. That being said, for most of my childhood, we were what you would call maybe a Christmas and Easter Sunday Christians, where we only went to church maybe 2 or 3 times a year. That
Mhm.
being said, I was raised with the family Bible and the stories all the time, and um, we always went over scripture on Sundays and that sort of thing. Around 9/11, that I was about 10 years old, maybe around that time. But that was really about the time when 9/11 happened, where I started to think about mortality and life and death. And
Mhm.
our community, a local Baptist church in town, held a memorial service for the fallen from 9/11. And going to that really affected me in a big way. And soon after, I asked my parents if we could start going to church every Sunday, and we started doing the old Protestant church shopping thing, going from one church to another every Sunday and seeing where we wanted to fit in. And eventually, we found a nice little Baptist church in town and started going there. And eventually, my father actually became a deacon for a while, and we were going every Sunday. Got really involved, and I got baptized there when I was 11 or 12, I believe 11. And
Mhm.
yeah, that kind of got me into it. And we were doing that for 3 or 4 years. And then there was some church politics stuff. We stopped going there frequently. But I never really lost my faith. I just stopped going to church. My family stopped going to church there. And
Mhm.
we stopped doing frequent, once or twice a week. And
Mhm.
so that kind of put it on pause for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you say that, when you were 9 or 10 years old, you started questioning, kind of thinking about more mortality. What do you remember of the first things that kind of popped up for you?
As far as
Like, hey, what
um,
happens after we die? Is there really a kingdom of heaven? Is there really afterlife? Did you have like,
sure.
growing up, obviously having some reflections on science, being, 10, 11 years old? What were the kind of initial thoughts that you can remember?
Yeah, well, I think I can say I think I've been blessed to say that I've never really had an issue, doubting. I've always had an easy time believing. I feel like there might be some portion of the population that just has an easier time, thinking beyond the material. And
Hmm.
so for me, it was less about, is God real? Is God not real? It was more about, not that that idea hasn't crossed my mind. Of course, it has plenty of times, and studying science myself, but and being around a lot of very materials-minded folks. But that being said, it wasn't so much about that. It was more about thinking, well, one day I will die too, and memento mori. So what do I do about that? How should I respond? And should I start going to church? What is it in raising a Baptist tradition? Being saved. What does it mean to be saved? What is baptism? What does this all mean? So I started to ask my parents, and I wanted to go to church. They didn't push me into it. I feel like I almost pushed them into it.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I have a 6-year-old, and he's really interested in kind of driving a lot of our our family towards attending church regularly. So
good.
so you're a scientist, right?
Yeah.
So how do you square the scientific worldview with the religious worldview?
So I think, there's a different ways to put it. We can talk about, a lot of times I talk to my friends about, base materialism, or you might call it like a physicalist reductionism, where only what I can perceive is what is true. But to me, that's always seemed, asinine to me, because, to me, science in the material is a category, but like, you can prove really abstract mathematical equations without there being any material reality to that math. And you can find in literature, in Shakespeare, you can find truth in Shakespeare, but you can't scientifically prove, Hamlet. That there's no. So it seems pretty clear to me that there is truth outside of the material. So there's definitely a material underpinning to the way things work and the way things function, and that's always fascinated me. I like knowing how things work. And for me, I'm very practical minded in my science. Like I said, I study, plant biology, that sort of thing. And so for me, it's always been about how can I help feed people? How can I help, achieve certain goals with what we know? So I feel like I'm kind of going on a tangent right now, or I'm ranting, but
no, go ahead. No, that's great.
no.
That's wonderful. So what do you mean? You said there's truth in Shakespeare. What do you mean by that?
Well, I guess I mean, you can read something like any whether it's Shakespeare or any good literature, you can find truth about the human condition. Truth about there's certain things that you can see in literature that you simply can't find, in a science textbook, or you might not even really observe, studying plants, or something that you can only really experience, through the human condition. And you can find that definitely in a much more elevated way in scripture. And I think definitely as I've gotten older, I really start to see also in liturgy, in the mass, in the sacraments, I think there is truth there that it's like, I don't know, it's like I grew up in a Baptist tradition, and you see a lot of folks who take things very, like fundamentalists who take things literally. And I'm not a absolute literalist, being Catholic now. But so I might have some friends who are agnostic or atheists, and ask the question like, do you take the Bible literally? I'm like, that's a weird question, because the Bible is such a large selection of different genres of books. It's like, do you take the library literally? It's like, yeah, you can look at like the gospel accounts, for example, and you can take those seriously, but I don't see a way to take the Psalms literally. If you have poems and prayers, how do you take those literally? The only way that you can really perceive them as true, and you definitely can perceive them as true, I think, is in the spiritual and in the emotional. I think that there is truth there.
How would you define the spiritual?
How would I define the spiritual? Well, I feel like if I'm not careful, I might just I might trying to think what word I'm looking for. I don't want to just read textbook definitions of things, but I will say though that we as humans, the Christian understanding is that we are body soul composites. We are not a spirit trapped inside of clay. That we are both a body and we are both a spirit. So the question was, how would I define spiritual?
The spiritual realm. Is it someplace that's outside of the physical realm? Like, you have the spectrums of light that
Hmm.
it's, physically you can understand that it's outside the spectrum of light, or, I've talked in different conversations about the psychedelic space or the dream
Oh
space.
yeah.
Are these spiritual spaces, would you say?
That's a good question. I think there is a bit of overlap there. In talking about psychedelics, I think that if someone were to take psychedelics, and I know I've listened to a bit of your videos and your experiences with them. I think that if someone takes psychedelics, they can very much open themselves up to the spiritual. It's not necessarily spiritual, but it's like
Hmm.
being opening oneself up with mediums or some kind of a cult or something like that. You open yourself up to it. That being said, I don't believe that spiritual is something that's reducible to the material. So it's not like you can look at an angel under the microscope. That's not what we're talking about. Our understanding, whether you're Orthodox or Catholic, the understanding of God is, God is not a composed being. God is,
Hmm.
uh, I know we have a difference in like the idea of divine simplicity, that kind of thing. But aside from that, we understand that God is the source, the non-contingent source of all things contingent.
Hmm.
So all things that are contingent, all things that are material, God is the source of that. So you're not going to find God or the spiritual in the material. It's like a category error.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
Would you say that God is also immanent, where he's transcendent? Is he also immanent? Is he also in the material as well? Maybe not reduced to it.
Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, if you have a sacramental understanding of Christian theology, I mean, you can find Christ in the Eucharist. You can
Hmm.
find him there fully present. Body, soul, blood, and divinity. So
Hmm.
yeah, I believe in a physical way in the Eucharist, in the sacraments, but also I forget who it was. I don't know who I'm paraphrasing here, but I've heard it said that God is closer to us than our breath is to our lungs.
Hmm.
you know God's always there. He's not distant. He's not in a deist sense.
Hmm.
Excuse me.
Yeah, no, no. Yeah, I like that. I never heard that said like that. That's good. Now
Mm.
you came from a Baptist, and I was having a talk with someone about the difference between the Baptist idea of communion in the Eucharist versus the Catholic.
Yeah, yeah,
What was your understanding of communion as a Baptist versus your understanding now as a Catholic, right?
yeah. And that's been a big jump. I really do feel like, I mean, I feel like I really did have a conversion as far as my understanding of Christ and the Trinity as a whole, and in my entire faith. It's really changed. But that being said, communion in particular, the Baptists, they don't have a sacramental theology. Instead of having like separate sacraments, they will talk about having two ordinances, and the two ordinances would be baptism and communion, or the Lord's Supper, they call it. And so you might know that for the Baptists, I don't know if you do or not, but for the Baptists, it's purely symbolic. It's still very reverent, but it's very symbolic. So their understanding of John chapter 6 is that it's a pure symbolism of Christ's sacrifice for us. And that was my understanding growing up, is that the bread represents his body, and the wine, but being Baptist, it was grape juice. They didn't drink wine. So the
Hmm.
grape juice represented his blood shed on the cross. And so still a very um, reverent moment when you receive the Lord's Supper or communion, but it's definitely not the same as going up to the altar to receive the body and blood of our Lord. It's a very different thing. And it changes the way you look at all theology. It all comes back to the Eucharist.
Hmm.
There's a Catholic saying in the Catechism that talks about the Eucharist being the sum and summit of Christian life. That's the focus of everything. That's how we come into communion with Christ, and we he becomes us. You know, he enters into our body, and he literally becomes us. And
Hmm.
in that way, in a strange way, we start to become him as well in
Hmm.
grace, and it changes us. It really does.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I was talking with actually my wife today, and we're talking about. So, would you say quickly that the difference would be it's maybe metaphorical in the Baptist sense,
Yeah,
representational, symbolic, and in the Catholic sense, it's metaphysical?
metaphysical and literal. Though I
literal.
would
Yeah.
say in the Catholic too, there's still a symbolic element to it. That, you know, it's, and I've heard there's a lot of overlap between the Catholics and Orthodox in the idea of symbolism. And I've heard Peugeot talk about Eucharist and going back to Cain and Abel, and Cain sacrificed his offering of grain, and Abel's sacrifice of the blood of the lamb, and
Hmm.
it kind of ties into that. And it's like God takes wine and bread as the gifts. He takes these works of men, even though these are works of his creation. There's so much intertwining right there. So
Hmm.
you have grapes and grain, these natural things that we take, we domesticate, and then with our hands we create these refined products, this bread and this wine. And then Christ takes this and makes it into himself. It's like he takes our work, he lifts it up, and he makes it something so much more that only he can.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think there's some kind of like, maybe this is a lower dimensional slice of that process? Like if you eat a banana, right, that
Mm.
banana becomes part of your body, becomes part of Tyler, becomes part of your
Sure.
identity. We know the chemical processes that happen there, but we don't really understand how that happens. Like it doesn't become a banana that's part of your body. It becomes part of your body, your identity, right? Do you think that is like a lower dimensional slice of what happens in this higher dimensional way of eating from the blood and the body of Christ, where you actually become part of his body?
Yes, absolutely. Being in communion with the church, you are literally part of the body of Christ. So I mean, it's like as he becomes part of our body, we become part of his body. And in some ways, it's in the word of the sacrament. It is communion that we
Mhm.
become part of that body. Yeah, yeah.
What do you think the term body there means when you say we become part of his body? I think in it kind of
Mhm.
in the same line of questioning, how do you understand Peugeot's usage of the term symbolism? I think
My
they go on hand in
understanding,
hand,
yeah,
actually. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, my understanding of symbolism, you can go into the etymology of the word, which is coming together. It's like a it kind of it points to something higher. So like you talk about with communion, there is a literal reality to it. You're literally receiving the body and blood of Christ, but it's also, like you said, it's pointing to a higher, it's like a kind of a cosmic body, that
Hmm.
there is a real physical church, and there is a real physical set of believers who are part of that. But one thing I learned, before I became Catholic, I was actually attending Orthodox liturgies when I was in college. And one of the things I learned through the Orthodox is the idea that when you are at a divine liturgy and you're praying, you are not just praying with those who are in that parish with you. You're not just praying with every parish out there, but you're also praying with every saint and every angel that has ever existed. And
Hmm.
that's it. That's what it is. And
Yeah.
we become united. And through Christ, we become united. We all become adopted into that family.
Hmm. Yeah. So here's a question that I don't really have a lot of questions that I ask, I don't have an answer to. That's probably why I kind of ask them. Do you think it's possible to be a part of Christ's body outside of the church?
Hmm. I guess I would need some qualifiers on, I guess, what we mean by part of the church outside of the body, or part of the body. Because my
Mhm.
understanding is that the church is the body of Christ. So
Yeah.
I guess the way I'm interpreting it, I would say no. But that being said, are we talking about can someone outside of the church receive salvation? That kind of question,
Sure.
or
Yeah. I think that's, yeah.
yeah. Well. I mean, I'm a convert to Catholicism. I come from a Baptist background, but I can get into the. I can go quickly into the conversion a little bit later, but my family is not Catholic, so
Mm.
when I see my folks, we have really great, robust, and healthy theological debates. Like every time I come down now, it's actually really enjoyable. It's not heated or nothing too bad, but so my father and I talk about it, and he'll bring up the good thief on the cross. He never received baptism. He
Hmm.
never really became in that way, and so I think if you look at scripture and you look at what the church teaches, like, sure, there are, like, provably like that, there are those who receive salvation without, going through the sacraments, without becoming, a part of the church. That being said, the way that we were given by Christ is through his sacraments and through his church. So, it's like I told my father, I'm like, it's like, yeah, the good thief on the cross, he only had to suffer death on the cross and suffer with Christ to receive that. I'll go ahead and receive baptism with sacraments. I'll pass on that. But
Yeah, it's a good point. That's a good retort. I like that.
yeah,
How old are you now?
I'll be turning 30 later this year.
30. And how long have you been in part of the Catholic Church?
Well, so let me go back a little bit. I
Mhm.
won't go too long into my whole life story, but like I
Take
said,
as much time and it goes as far as you want.
okay, great. So, like I said, we stopped going to church frequently and regularly when I was probably about 15, 16. So right around that same time, I was getting interested in other things. Mainly, I mean, I stayed away when I was a teenager. I stayed away from partying too hard. I didn't really get into drugs around that age, but I was getting interested in more earthly philosophy, like political philosophy, that kind of thing. That
Mhm.
was more what my focus was. That being said, when I got to UF, I kind of got tired of partying with my roommates and just like you go to school all week, and Friday night you go party with your friends, and you go too hard Saturday, you're hungover, and then
Mhm.
by Sunday you have no energy. I did that for about a month, and I realized, what, I'm wasting my weekends, and I'm not really having that much fun. It,
Mhm.
so, so I'm like, let me do something a little bit more, and I was still a believer. So one thing I wanted to do was, well, let me go back a little bit further than that.
Mhm.
So um, I joined my father one time for a reunion when he was young. Baptist church he went to. He was part of a youth choir. He actually had a reunion with some of the guys from the youth choir, and they all sang their old songs at this Baptist church. And one of them was this old Baptist song called "Old Time Religion."
Mhm.
And I don't remember all the lyrics, but what the chorus is singing is "Give me the old time religion." And so something I've always been interested in is the early church. Really, because of that song, the lyrics of that song, I was interested in genuine Christianity, authentic, ancient Christianity. I One thing that was always strange to me is, why are there so many different denominations? And
Mhm.
what clearly, if you have denominations that are not just the differentiation isn't just aesthetic, but it's also theological. Clearly, someone's right and clearly someone's wrong. And there might be a lot of groups that are wrong. So I'm like, okay, so which one's closer to the truth? So while I was in college, I just started to study early church history. And I realized pretty quickly that, if you look into it, early church history, the early church was apostolic. They had apostolic succession, and they really did believe in a sacramental theology, and they had communion of saints and all these things. So I'm like, well, I kind of narrowed down my options pretty quickly. But that
Mhm.
being said, when every Sunday for a while in college, I was going to a different denomination every Sunday.
Hmm.
I went to Quaker meetings, and I went to Baptist church and Presbyterian. And I ended up going to the Greek Orthodox up there in Gainesville. I think that's what, St. Elizabeth's. I forget, but I think
Mhm.
they're a Greek Orthodox church. Um, but I started to realize that ancient Christianity was apostolic and sacramental. So it really narrowed down to, well, do I want to look more at the Catholics or the Orthodox? But being a good Baptist raised that I did not want to be Catholic at all. I had no interest in becoming Catholic whatsoever.
Mhm.
So my thought was, well, I can just start going to the Orthodox liturgies, and I can get away from. I was so naive. I thought I could get away from all those things that the Catholics added, like praying to the saints and all that. So I go to Orthodox liturgy, and I realized how wrong I was, and I realized that this is part of the history of the church. This is what we do, and I was not able to hear it from the Catholics. I was willing to hear it from the Orthodox, and I value my time, going to Orthodox liturgies. I learned so much. I learned to, the value of, praying to and with saints for intercession, and the value of iconography. And I learned so much through my time with them. Um, and that I felt like I was on the fence for a while. Well, I'm like, well, I still don't know which way to go. And I feel like 5, 6 years, I was on the fence about where I should wind up, whether I should become, Orthodox or Catholic. And I kind of put it on the back burner for a while. And I was so busy, after I graduated college, I was trying to find a job. So it was one of those things like, I'll get back to church eventually, I'll get to it. So I got back to not going to church on Sundays and that sort of thing. And I was actually the job I'm at now and the place I'm at now here in Lakeland. And things are going great. I was single at the time and making good money, doing this, doing that. I had, I was and still am pretty materially comfortable. But I learned pretty quick once I got through all the hoops of, okay, I got to get through college. Okay, now I'm through college. Now I got to get this job. The job I'm at now, it's not that good. Let me get to the next job. And I finally got to the job I wanted. And then I realized I'm like, okay, now what?
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly I didn't have an answer anymore. And I found that I wasn't really satisfied. I'm like, maybe I'll just maybe I'll buy a new video game console, maybe I'll build a PC, maybe I'll get into some other hobby. And I have plenty of hobbies, archery or whatever it is, and I still enjoy that stuff, of course, but I realized that these things, these lower goods, weren't really doing it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so 2019, just a few years ago, I was pacing around my apartment. It was like 9:30 at night. I'm just pacing around. I have all these things I could be doing. I could be reading books or watching movies or playing video games with my friends or something. I could be doing something, but nothing's satisfying me. And I'm pacing around. I'm right over here. And I remember I got down to my knees and I felt compelled to pray to the Holy Spirit
Mm-hmm.
for guidance. And I'm like, I don't know which way I should go. And I guess a day or two later, I just felt compelled to start reading about the rosary. So I hardly knew what a rosary was. I just knew prayer beads. I knew about prayer ropes and chotkeys and rosaries. So that week after work, I stopped by a little Christian bookstore and I asked them if they had rosaries, and the lady goes, "Yeah, right here," and it was like right next to me. It was a little $20 rosary, and I picked one up, and after like a few days I learned how to pray it. And that Sunday I decided I was going to go to mass. And I went there, and that day after mass I met a nice young lady who's now we're going to be married next month. So it just kind of all snowballed all at once. And I just felt
Congratulations.
yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
I
awesome,
appreciate
man.
it.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's how the Holy Spirit works, I think.
I think
That's
so.
wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Just quickly, let's go back. So when you were going to different churches in
Mhm.
Gainesville, were you going by yourself?
Some for the most part, yeah. I did have friends. So I actually had a Romanian friend. She was Romanian Orthodox, and we would go
Mhm.
to that Greek Orthodox every now and then. And I had a friend, or my roommate. We would go to church every now and then. And then I just had some friends, like some Baptist friends. I go with them. So yeah,
Mhm.
every now and then, about half the time I was with friends. The other half the time I was alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You had friends that would join you to do that. That's great. Like, and that you took the initiative to do that. And then how about when you just started checking out the Catholic Church? Were you going by yourself with some friends, or?
I was going alone because I never went to a Catholic mass when I was in college. I didn't want to become Catholic. I still had an issue with papal authority and that sort of thing. And but I started going here when I went to a mass. That was not my first mass. I had gone to a few before. There was a girl a few years ago who I dated who was Catholic, and she never wanted to miss Sunday mass. So whenever we were in the same town together, we were like a town apart. We would meet up and go to mass with her.
Mhm.
So I did become familiar with it. And but go back to your question. I forget, what was your question about, Catholic mass?
Actually, let's go back to this, what you just said there about the infallibility of the Pope. What are your
Sure,
thoughts on
sure,
that?
sure. Yeah. So about the dogma of papal infallibility.
Mhm.
Well, I think, for me, going back to, history of the church and church authority, it's like I had one thing that had to click, and then from there, everything else lined up. And for me, at first it started with looking at, church history and seeing that church history was, apostolic and it was sacramental. once I realized that, it kind of narrowed it down. I didn't want to be Presbyterian. I didn't want to be Baptist or another Protestant group. I wanted to either be from some Orthodox tradition or I wanted to be Catholic. And so for me, I'm like, and I of course we're gonna have our difference on that, but it is what it is. But so the question came down to was did Peter have some kind of primacy? And when I from my I mean I was on the fence for what I say like 5 or 6 years, and that was excruciating actually, not knowing where I should be and not knowing who was right, who was wrong. And eventually I just read enough of the writings from church fathers and looking at things written in the old what do you call them, councils, and I just saw enough deference to the chair of Peter that I felt that was where the head of the church was.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. That being said, the Catholic view of, like I say, with the Orthodox is that even though we are a body divided, the Orthodox, we're still brothers in Christ, and we still have valid sacraments and valid bishops, and that's still the body of Christ. And I hope that one day we become one again, and whether it's in a way that the Orthodox prefer or the Catholics prefer, we'll see. I mean, time will tell, and the Holy Spirit will lead us. But I say, for the meantime, stick with your bishop and keep on praying. And so.
Yeah, I don't take issue at all. Like I don't get involved in the political aspect of the differences between the Orthodox and Catholic Church. It just doesn't interest me. Not that it's not important. Like just for me, it's not an interest. It's not something that I'm particularly interested in. But what was the reaction by your parents when you were making these considerations? What was their reaction?
Well, I think by the time I decided that I was going to be Catholic, they're like, don't you want to be Orthodox instead? Because honestly, if you're coming from a Baptist background, you don't want to be Catholic, because like you're raised so many times that like the Catholic idolatry and all that. But I explained to them that when it comes to icons and intercession of saints, that this isn't a Catholic thing. This is an ancient Christian thing, and you can't get away from that when you try to go for that old time religion that I was looking for. That's what I found. And so I think it wasn't really so much. There was pushback. I mean, we had a really, I would say, healthy debates. It wasn't like plates flying or anything, but we had disagreements, and we still do. But gosh, we're very close, and both of my parents were there when I got confirmed. I mean, they go with me the Catholic Mass. Like when I'm in town to see my folks, they will join me at Mass. I even offered my dad, I'm like, after Mass I'll go with you to a Protestant service. He's like I said, he raised me Baptist, but originally he was a Lutheran. He was actually baptized as an infant Lutheran. And so I'm like, do you want to go to the local Lutheran service? And he's like, no, let's just go to the Catholic Church. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So yeah, it's been very good, and we try to be prayerful. We always pray for each other, and we're still a family. And we, at the end of the day, even though we have I would say really very big theological differences, we still follow Christ, and I still pray for them. They pray for me, and I covet their prayers. So
wow, that's beautiful. Yeah. That's a wonderful story, man. So I was going to ask you something, but tell me about the rosary. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So before I get into the rosary, I'll talk about McLuhan real quick. Did you know that McLuhan had a very big devotion to the rosary?
No, I knew about his devotion to the Catholic Church, that he was very devoted, but I wasn't sure about his relationship. I've not heard about his relationship with the rosary. Please tell me.
Yeah, so he actually had a big devotion to the Blessed Theotokos, our mother. I have a blog here I found months ago, and I thought this would be a kind of an interesting thing to bring up. I can send you the link later if you want to put it in the description later. This is written by a professor at Wheaton College, and it was a blog post he had from 2013, and it was called "The Medium is the Messiah: McLuhan's Religion and its Relationship to His Media Theory." And it's all about how he was a adult convert to Catholicism himself, and his religion, his Catholicism, and his understanding of the faith is what informed his tetrad and his whole communications theory. I'm trying to find where he actually told a colleague about his relationship with the Theotokos. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Okay, yeah, here we go. Yeah, so it says, this is just a quick excerpt. This is one of his colleagues who said, first it says, we also know that in addition to being a devout Protestant Catholic, McLuhan was profoundly intellectually and spiritually indebted to the Mother of God. He had a direct connection with the Blessed Virgin Mary, an associate recalls. His quote is, he alluded to it briefly once, almost fearfully, in a please don't laugh at me kind of tone. He didn't say, I know this because the Blessed Virgin Mary told me, but it was clear from what he said that he was interrogating her about his ideas, and one of the reasons he was so sure about certain things was that the Virgin had certified his understanding of them. So he had his relationship and his devotion to the Theotokos is so far beyond where I'm at right now. And when I read that, I'm like, I want that. But for me, so before I get into the rosary, what do you know about it? As far as, because I'm sure that you probably have a prayer rope, and I'm sure you're big into the Jesus prayer. So I know that you value good, repetitious, bead prayer.
Absolutely.
What do you know about the rosary itself? Because I know it's different than Eastern practices.
Not much.
Okay. So the rosary is a little bit different. So the history about it is fascinating, and I can give like a quick little breakdown. So my understanding is that bead prayer or rote prayer in Christian tradition that we both have in the East and West really can go back to the Desert Fathers. My understanding is that historically the Desert Fathers, they would memorize all the Psalms, and they would count their Psalms with rocks. And so people who would come to visit the Desert Fathers, the monks, obviously, laymen could not carry around rocks, but they began to use, ropes and beads, and these kind of things. And since, the average layman wasn't able to memorize all the Psalms, most people were illiterate until very recently, they would instead, I believe with the recommendation by the monks, is they would replace all the Psalms with an Our Father. So it was like an Our Father Psalter, where you would have, like this would be, this is 50 beads, so it'd be like 50 Our Fathers is how they would do it. And it would be like 50 times 3, so like 150. And they would do that, daily. And that was like a devotion for a long time. And then eventually, in southern France, in I think the 1200s, there was a heresy that broke out known as the Cathars. The Cathars were arguably you can call them like a Gnostic sect. My understanding is that they have their origins with the Bogomils, who came from Constantinople, another dualist kind of sect. And they, being dualist and being Gnostic, they rejected the flesh. They thought the flesh was evil. They thought, the typical thing, soul good, material bad. And so this Dominican friar went to preach to them, and he was an excellent rhetorician. He was Saint Dominic. Later, he would become the founder of the Dominican order. He went to preach to them, and he found that by just trying to use his logic and his reason, he was failing. People were, either arguing with him, scoffing at him, or trying to stone him to death. So he retreated, and this is his account was he retreated to the woods outside of a town in southern France, and he had basically his own spiritual retreat for a while, where he went into fasting, and he was just out in the woods. And his account was he received a vision of the Virgin Mary, who told him to take the Psalter and preach these mysteries. And the mysteries that she gave him are essentially meditations of the gospel. And the original 15 mysteries that he meditated upon, basically they were a refutation. They're moments in the life, death, and resurrection of Christ that are really a refutation of the Cathar theology. So we usually break them into three sets of mysteries for the original 15 mysteries. So the first would be the joyful mysteries. The first would be the Annunciation from Gabriel to the Virgin Mary, that she would conceive. Second would be Mary meeting with her cousin Elizabeth. Third would be Christmas, the Nativity. Fourth would be meditation on, oh gosh, that would be Jesus being presented in the temple, and Saint Simeon's prophecy about him being a major division. And the fifth would be Jesus being lost in the temple, and his parents trying to find him and then finding him joyfully after 3 days. And then it goes on. The second set would be the sorrowful, which is Passion of Christ. And then the third is the glorious with his resurrection. And then it's actually, and then the queenship of Mary, and it kind of goes into that sort of thing later on. But it's so you're not just praying, Our Fathers and Hail Marys, but you're actually, in each decade, you have a mental prayer where you're actually spending time meditating in a quiet prayer. So while you have your vocal prayer, you're also meditating on a mental prayer where you are effectively focusing on these passages from the gospel. And you're going through that. And so a lot of probably not enough Catholics these days, but there's plenty of Catholics who they try to pray the rosary every day. And so, as some have called it, it's like the gospel on a set of beads. So, like, especially in the time back before most folks could read, it was a way to meditate on the life, death, and resurrection of Christ, and being able to reflect on it, not just reading it on words, but really in your heart, in a prayerful and spiritual way. And that's really what the rosary is.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I didn't know all that. And so how long have you been using the rosary, and you pray daily with it?
Yeah, I try to pray daily. My thing has been, really, since I started in 2019, I either pray 5 decades daily. So like each day, so they have a tradition. Actually, we talked about the guy who did your logo, Owen Cyclops.
Yep.
He's done a few things. He did this work right here. You probably can't see it well. He still has them for sale. This is actually a rosary diagram. And traditionally, what you do is each day you have a different set. So in the ordinary time of the calendar, it's usually Mondays, it's a joyful, Tuesdays, sorrowful, mysteries, Wednesdays, glorious, and then Thursdays, these days, it's the luminous, which is a new set of mysteries that were given to us by Pope St. John Paul II, which is actually a new set of mysteries that really combats modernism in a big way. Not everyone prays those, but I'm a big fan of them. And then Friday, of course, back to the crucifixion, back to the sorrowful. And so there's one for each day. And so I try to do at least 5 decades a day. And then if I mess up, if I miss a day or two, I will write that down and go back to it. So I try to make sure that I pray at least 5 decades for every day of the year. So I try to be that's like my main devotion is the rosary. And I pray other devotions as well. We got the Saint Michael chaplet and other things, but the rosary is my big thing. And me and my fiance, we try to pray it together a couple times a week at least. And really our goal is, once we get married and we're living together, to pray it every day.
Yeah, beautiful. So what is your fiance's kind of religious understanding? Is it similar to yours? Are you guys kind of simpatico on that? And have you always been?
Yeah, she grew up in what you could call like a mixed family, where her father was Catholic and her mother was Presbyterian. But around the time that she was going to be confirmed, her mother also got confirmed and became Catholic. So she now lives in a very Catholic household. So I met her at Mass, and so we're pretty much on board, spiritually, and we're big on prayer and wanting to raise our future children in the faith. And it's been really just that harmony, that spiritual harmony, is really good. And she's been good for me. And I feel like where I was coming from in my life, how I was living for a while, I feel like in comparison to her, I feel like a barbarian. So she's been very grounding for me, I think you could say. And
Wonderful, man. That's a blessing. Good on you, man. Good on you. That's awesome. Now, you said that when did you encounter the Jesus prayer?
Oh, the Jesus prayer. So I actually, like I said, I encountered that in my time when I was with the Orthodox. That said, that's been a a prayer that's been picked up more and more, I'd say, by Western Catholics. The Eastern Catholics have always done it, but we've been picking it up more and more. But in a very similar way, I mean, it's something that you can pray throughout the day, and I do it all the time. It's like, before a big thing, before a big event, before I propose to my fiance, or before I go to confession, or really before I go to receive communion, or one of these things. That's always in my breath, always trying to pray that. And I don't know if you saw that one video with Peugeot where he goes into the detail of the Jesus prayer. He has was it like a 45-minute video? It was great, and what he goes into, if people who haven't seen it yet see it, because I think he has it unlisted. I don't know, because I know it's one of his patron things, but he really goes into great detail on that, and I think it's a great way to learn it. But I mean, it's like you have your supplication, your that in. It's like the spirit in and your sin out, spirit in, sin out. And, it becomes, it's like, I think that was Paul, talks about praying without ceasing. And that's really, I feel it's one of the best ways to do so. It's a great prayer.
Yeah, no, I agree. Wonderful. Now, can you maybe go into a little bit of what your conversion felt like?
Oh yeah. I felt like, I think that, you have many people who take psychedelics, talk about ego death. And I feel like in a very big way, my conversion felt like just my ego taking a pounding, where all of my conceptions, all of my ego and my pride really just, it didn't die, but I feel like, what I found important, I no longer find nearly as important. All these worldly things, I just don't focus on it quite as much. I mean, sure, it's like you still have your lower goods that you can still have, but first seek the kingdom of God. But it's like, I remember that night when I prayed, and I got down on my knees over there, prayed to the Holy Spirit, and I realized that the direction I was going, I think when I decided I was going to talk to the local priest and tell him I was interested in going into RCIA, going into conversion, that was a big step, because I realized what was coming was, if I was going to live this faithfully, that I would have to seek a sacramental life, and that if I were going to screw up and sin, that in a big way, that I couldn't just sweep it under the rug. I had to get up and go to confession, and that if I were going to be serious as a Catholic, I can't just use contraception and all these things and view sex in the married life as just a pleasure thing. But it's a sacramental thing, and you have to be open to life. And so whatever ideas I had when I was in my early 20s, I had to let go of some of those and not be. I'm a lot less selfish, I hope, than I was a few years ago. And I think that I still have a lot of work to do on that, and to live for others. And I hope that becoming a husband, and God willing, one day a father, that will really help with my sanctification. I really hope that I can help my loved ones and they can help me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, it's just been a huge paradigm shift and now I feel like just the way I view the world in just the past few years, that was 2019. It's been night and day. And now it's like, I tried to attend. I saw with your last talk, you talk about, he asked, what was the last gentleman's name? I'm sorry to him. I forget his name.
Oh, Richard.
Richard. Okay. Yeah. Talking about attending, church every Sunday. And, other than during the lockdown we had, I tried to attend mass every Sunday, and I try to go in for, adoration. What's, the Catholic tradition of going before the sacrament and praying before the sacrament for at least an hour. I try to do that with my fiance once a week, and that's been fruitful for us to pray in that way. But yeah, it's been a big change for me. My Sundays are no longer a second Saturday, man. It's like, it's like your Sunday becomes, it's not for you, it's for God, and it's for your family, and it's for your community. It's not about you.
Yeah, wonderful. Do you have a lot of other young adults or people your age in the church?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I would say maybe not as much as I would hope, but yeah, they're definitely there. There's about maybe 6 or so Catholic parishes in my area, and all over the place. And we're pretty connected with a lot of the young Catholics in the area. I spent 3 months. There's a little ascetic program called Exodus 90 that I don't know if you're familiar with it, that some Catholic guys do. It's like a thing for Catholic men where you get with a group of guys, it's like you make a little fraternity, and then for 90 days, it's like you hold each other accountable for like 90 days of rigorous asceticism and prayer, where cold showers for 90 days and no sweets, no alcohol, no excessive internet usage or TVs, movies, video games, and you hold yourself to daily prayer and scripture reading. And I met with some guys around January, like January 4th. So we started doing that. And what was weird was with everything that's happened in the last few months, I was pretty focused on this. I stepped away from it after 90 days, and I realized how much things have changed in the last 3 months in the world. I'm like, it's like stepping out of a time capsule.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, they are around, and it's good to have that kind of community. And I know you said that you don't always go to your local parish. Do you have one nearby? I was wondering.
Yeah, we do. We have one. The one that I went to as a kid is about 30 minutes away. And, trying to kind of get my family as a whole to go all together. And we're in the process. We've met with the priest, and we're kind of trying to, we have 3 kids, and my wife works every other weekend as a critical care nurse. So it's just finding that rhythm to start going regularly again. And, it's something that we're in the process of. So, I pray heavily that, we'll continue down that road. And, you've inspired me, man. I mean, you're really spiritually mature beyond your years. And I think that you're going to be really a great influence on my subscribers and people that view this. So really good on you. That's really a wonderful thing to see. Kind of your life story is really kind of wonderful. And I guess my last question before you can ask me some questions, and I'll be done interrogating you here. Is there a conception of theosis or deification in the Catholic Church?
Yes.
What does that look like?
We use those words, deification and theosis. Was it, Bishop Robert Barron, that very popular media bishop, he talks about that. I mean, there may not be as much focus on that terminology these days in Catholic theology, and we have our own term as well, which is the beatific vision, which is, of course, being able, adoratio, seeing God eye to eye, which is that's what heaven is being in God's presence in full communion. And so I guess the idea of deification was it Saint Athanasius who had that. I'm trying to see if I can paraphrase, if that's even him, who said, the idea that, God became man so that man could become gods, or in other words, become like God, become deified, become worthy of being in his presence, being able to walk with him. So that's definitely there. And one thing I found bouncing between the East and the West is that we have a lot of the same concepts, but we have different words for it.
Yeah.
Now, like I know, in the West, we have the idea of, purgatory, and that's a very, the Latin thing to do is everything tries to be very well defined. The Catholics try to define everything almost meticulously. But so I know there's no the dogma of purgatory in the East, but we still both pray for the dead. So we still have this idea of praying for the departed and for them to find their rest. So it's like you do have these, these ideas of, we might not have the same terminology, but we definitely often have very similar ideas.
Yeah. Very interesting. I think that, my Orthodox fans are going to be upset at me because the way you speak about the Catholic Church, you're going to be driving some people towards there. No, I'm just joking, but no, I'm just kidding. But really.
Submit to Rome.
Yeah, right. Really well spoken, man, and really appreciate your time. And just a few minutes that we have here left. Do you have any questions for me at all?
I did. I remember a few videos ago, you mentioned a local monastery. I'm trying to think, was that the one that's over on Williston?
Yeah, it's off of exit 236.
Okay.
Is it 386? I think it is. It's right after Ocala. I think it is off
12,
Williston.
It's like 12600 West Highway 318, Williston, Florida.
Yeah, it's Panagia Vlerhoron Monastery. Yeah, that was created by. It was one of. Yeah, you been there? Let me see.
I have not been there, but one second.
Let me
I
see.
probably have some glare right.
Yeah, that's it.
Missed that.
Yeah,
Yep, yep,
yeah.
yep. Yeah, so where I got this was a few years ago. I don't know why I never took the time to visit, but a few years ago, I actually visited the local Orthodox church. And after the liturgy, I was just talking with folks and told them that I was considering Orthodoxy at the time. So had some really great talk with the folks. And there was an older gentleman, and I remember him specifically. He actually had a prayer rope bracelet on his wrist, and
Hmm.
he said, "Hey, you should talk to my son. He's a monk at the monastery." And he just pulled out of his wallet, pulled a card. He's like, "You should go visit him." And I don't know why I never did, but
Hmm.
yeah, I've had this card ever since. So when you mentioned a monastery the other day, and a few videos back, I'm like, "Is that the same place?" And sure enough, I
Yeah.
looked and he said Williston. I'm like, that has to be it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that answers that question.
Man, if you would have gone, you would have been Orthodox, man. Sorry you missed your chance. No, I'm just kidding, man. No, it's a wonderful place to visit. I would encourage you. Saint Ephrem, he built 17 monasteries in the
Mm,
United States and Canada, and one of them was
mm,
is right here in our backyard. And I wasn't aware of that my entire life until just recently. So lots of, and I think these are types part of the actions of the Holy Spirit in different ways is how they, look, this connection here, you actually have that card in your pocket. It's very cool, very
yeah.
interesting. So cool, man. Well, we've gone an hour.
Okay.
If you have any other questions.
I don't know about questions, but man, I heard you say, in the last video, one because I heard it just coming home from work. One of the things that's been keeping you from going to, your parish was, having to wear a mask.
Hmm.
And I understand, wanting to kiss icons, and we kiss icons too. Last, on Good Friday, we have, you know, veneration of the cross, veneration of the Holy
Hmm.
Cross. And traditionally, what we do is we bear the cross, and then we all come up and we kiss it. And but we were not able to do that this year, so instead, and this is my first veneration of the cross as a Catholic, because last year I had to watch the mass online because I wasn't able to go. I was supposed to get confirmed that Easter Sunday last year, but I wasn't able to. I had to wait until September to get confirmed, and it was like the longest Lent ever. Gosh, yeah, I just wanted to receive the Eucharist so bad. But
Hmm.
yeah, but so instead, what we did for Good Friday was we genuflected in front of the cross. And I know it's not the same, being able to, venerate the icons, but I think it would be better to temporarily not be able to venerate the icons. I think it would be better to receive Eucharist and receive the sacraments than, you know, not go at all. I think that it would be worth it, man. I think that you should. I know that you said you're trying to work things out with your spouse and all that, and I know things are busy with your family, but I think that it would be good for all of you to seek the sacraments and do it, brother.
Yeah.
I think it'd be really good.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And it's more of a, my family, like I really want to make this a family thing and I want it
Mhm,
to stick and I want it to hold. Right.
mhm,
So, just putting a mask on my child to go do that, I think it's more of an excuse. And when I was talking to my priest, this kind of came up for me. And I don't know if I thought, I was like, I don't want to go to church and find out it's not real.
I
Right.
feel you.
So,
I feel you.
and it's not, and I'm glad that they came up, that came up when I was talking with them. I'm like, oh, thank you for bringing that up. Like, cause it's a kind of an, my path has gone through every twist and turn from, philosophical, deep philosophy, and then Eastern mysticism. And then you name it, right? Taoism for many years. And I'm like, well, is this all I got left? And it seems so, natural and organically real to me. And I'm like, so it's like, what if I can't get my family to go regularly? I can't, so it's all these insecurities. And I think I'm making the mask a type of, not a scapegoat, but some kind of artificial reason to not go. So that came up and we can address that, as a
Sure.
family and kind of move forward. So yeah, I appreciate and I agree. And I have this kind of the zeal to get back to taking the Eucharist, and
Mhm.
my wife is with me in terms of attending and kind of getting back into it, but she doesn't have this intense fervor that I have, right? So I'm kind of leading the way, and so is my son, my 6-year-old. So we'll be going sooner rather than later, right after Pascha. We're going to start going
Mhm.
together to the smaller services during the week, the Vesper services, and kind of, the Orthodox. My wife never went to church as a young, well, she went early on as a Catholic,
Okay.
but she didn't go really regularly, but she was really into the Bible as a really young girl. Right. So it's, we're on our own different kind of time scales with this, and that's okay. That's a good thing in a sense, so, and really going straight to liturgy together and kind of being overwhelmed with that, what that is, so we're going to start going to some Vesper services, some, prayer services, and work our way and kind of let, I pray daily of this process, and to guide me, and, your will and your timeline, just, help me make those right decisions. But that idea of taking the sacraments and getting my kids baptized is something that I'm very, 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 fervently interested in, kind of sooner rather than later. And it's been a long, a couple of years talking, and then COVID happened, of going through this process. So I appreciate your words, and I'll take them to heart, and they mean a lot, coming from you, actually. So thank you, man.
No problem, James. I appreciate the talk. It's been pretty fun.
Yeah, man.
And
I think a lot of people will enjoy it as well.
I hope so, man. I hope it's fruitful for not just us, but everyone who listens. I hope it's good.
Yeah, man. All right, Tyler. Well, thank you, man. God bless you.
God bless you, dude. I will pray for you and your family.
Thanks, you. Likewise, man. And congratulations again on the nuptials.
Thanks. I'm going to need it.
All right, brother. Thank you, man.
All right. See ya.